everyone, welcome back to the AutoX Bulletin. Now we have some very good news for us and you today, and that is that we're finally back at our HQ office because the lockdown restrictions have been eased. So we're very happy to be back here because now we can focus more on getting you the most amazing and up-to-date automotive content. Now moving forward, today we're talking about Bentley Motors and more specifically the Bentley Mulsanne, which by the way, along with the Rolls-Royce Phantom, is one of the most expensive luxury sedans you can get your hands on today. Now the current generation Mulsanne has been around for 10 years. It was launched in 2010 and sadly it's going to be the end of the line for that car this year. But the Mulsanne actually goes further back in time than this generation model. It was the first generation model that was launched in 1980 that was called the Mulsanne, and that was around for about 12 years, and that car's production line ended in 1992. But to understand why that car was called the Mulsanne, we have to go back even further in time. Now, we all know that Mr. W.O. Bentley was a huge racing car fanatic, and he loved building racing cars. In fact, he was so good at his job, he built some of the best engines you could imagine at that time. Now, because of his engineering genius, he was able to build those awesome cars, and thanks to him, the famed Bentley boys were able to win the legendary 24 Hours of Le Mans races in the late 20s a record 5 times. So that was a huge success for them, and so when Bentley was thinking of a name for their new T-Series model in 1980, they decided to call it the Mulsanne to pay homage to their legendary sporting motorsport history. Now, it was a small section of the racetrack of the 24 Hours of Le Mans that was called the Mulsanne Straight, and it was this straight that allowed the Bentley drivers to max out their vehicle speed, and that's where they dominated. The Bentley cars at that time were the fastest amongst all the manufacturers. And so to pay homage to their motorsport history, that straight, the Mulsanne Straight from the track, was brought over into the name for the Bentley Mulsanne luxury sports sedan. Now, the car was launched in 1980, and it came with a 6.75 liter V8 engine, which is one of the most legendary engines from Bentley. And it was also used in the Rolls-Royce, and the car in fact was based on the Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit. And so Bentley was very keen to get their own individual identity back from Rolls-Royce ownership. So they launched the Bentley Mulsanne Turbo. Now this car had 50% more horsepower than the regular Mulsanne, and it was a very nice driver's vehicle. In fact, a few years later, they launched the Bentley Mulsanne Turbo R. So the Turbo R model came out just a few years later, and that model produced a whopping 300 brake horsepower with almost 600 Nm of torque. The Mulsanne was now competing with the likes of Aston Martin and Ferrari. Now the Mulsanne of that era sold about 2,000 units, which was very good for that time, and it became an iconic luxury British sports sedan. Now when we fast forward to 2010, the legendary Arnage was reaching the end of its production line, and that's why Bentley decided to reintroduce the Mulsanne. And 2010 is when the car was first introduced. It also came with the same 6.75 liter V8 engine, but this time it was mated to an 8-speed automatic gearbox. And it also was the first car to be independently designed by Bentley Motors in over 80 years. Now the Mulsanne Speed was introduced in 2014, and the power output for this luxury sports sedan was now rated at 530 brake horsepower and 1,100 Nm of torque. The massive car that weighed over 2.5 tons could sprint from 0 to 100 kilometers in just 4.5 seconds. Now, of course, the interiors of the Mulsanne are as luxurious as ever as what you could imagine in a rupees 6 crore car. But it got even more fancy when they launched the extended wheelbase version in 2016. Now sadly, this legendary 6.75 liter V8 engine, which by the way is the longest continuously produced V8 engine since 1959, can no longer be updated to meet the strict EU emission norms, and that's why Bentley has now decided to phase out the Mulsanne. But in order to make sure it gets a very good going away party, Bentley has launched the Mulsanne 6.75 edition by Mulliner. Now only 30 units of this car will be produced, and the factory at Crewe was shut down due to the coronavirus lockdown, but it's set to reopen in a few days. And once that happens, the remaining units of this car will be produced and sold off, and then the Mulsanne will be no more for now. And that means that the new Flying Spur, which is essentially the 4-door version of the Continental GT, will now become the flagship model for Bentley. But still though, it's safe to say that the Bentley Mulsanne will go down in history as one of the most amazing and awesomest luxury sedans you've ever seen.